Cool. See, now we're live. See how it says live? And the number is ticking 1, 2, 3. Well, I'm really excited about this event and talk. And like I said before we got on, before we went live, just wanted to make it super informal and just talk about why everyone got into politics and on their respective campaigns, and just what brought them to the political world. And I'm so thankful that I got to work with all three of y'all many moons ago on the Warren campaign. I remember the first time I met every single person from Region 4 specifically. Shout out to Daniel and Deborah who aren't on this call, but I remember Bradley, Deborah, and Daniel who were the first three when they said, "Oh, these are going to be the FOs in your region." I was like, "Cool." And then Anna, you just like randomly showed up one day and they're like, "Oh, she's one of your organizers." I was like, "Oh, cool."
Exactly how it happened.
Yeah, that's exactly. I don't think there's anything more to the story. And then Mike was, I think Devin met you at hot Columbia event, and he's like, "Oh, I found someone who could be an intern," and then you went from an intern to an FO, and now you're a campaign manager. So, but really excited about this conversation. Like I said, I really do miss everyone and being able to work with you guys. But I guess just to start it off, and we could kick it off with Bradley. Just what's been your political journey from, I guess, your first gig, whether it be an internship or a volunteer opportunity, to what you're currently doing?
Yeah, so I did not intend on doing this as a career. I think I started off as a business and econ major at school, but quickly fell out of that and kind of fell into the love for politics and in general, especially democratic politics. And, I think I wasn't really excited in 2016. Bernie was really exciting a lot of people, but wasn't exciting me as much as I think he should have. And Hillary wasn't, but I also regretted not getting involved with that in 2016. And that really set off a spark for me personally and getting more involved in politics and doing something. And honestly wanted to make it a career. That was really a wake-up call for me to make a difference in it. And so I started off doing a gubernatorial race here, an internship for James Smith here in South Carolina. That was really fun. I learned a lot there. I've learned a lot on every campaign, but something different. I've never learned the same kind of stuff on every campaign. But that was a really good introductory experience to campaigns in general. And then I did a advocacy type stuff with conservation voters of South Carolina. So that's more advocacy campaign side of stuff, some more of your off-year things, which was really good to get that experience too, and also do conservation type work, still work towards, positive things and bettering the state with land, sea, and air. But after that, joined Warren campaign with you guys. That was a great experience here in South Carolina. Even up in Tennessee, doing that stuff was really new. Getting to work in a different state, which is not something I've done besides literally those 3 days for Super Tuesday. I've been in South Carolina my whole career. But after that, I did Organizing Together 2020 in Florida. I worked in South Carolina, but that was very interesting too, doing a independent expenditure kind of campaign. And then now I'm on Dick Harpootlian's campaign, managing that race. So I've kind of seen it all in terms of the advocacy side of things, independent expenditure, gubernatorial, state, national. And I'm lucky to have all that experience in a short amount of time. But it's unreal. It's great. But let's get someone else.
Cool. Anna, same question.
Hey, everybody. I'm Anna. I'm from Georgia. I'm currently working as a digital organizer for Raphael Warnock's campaign for the special election for the United States Senate in Georgia. So I guess I also kind of started in politics after the 2016 election. I voted and I showed up to an election night party and I was like, this is going to be great. And then it wasn't great. And then I woke up the next morning and I was a sophomore in college. So I changed my major from advertising to political science, and started getting really involved locally in politics in Athens, Georgia. So I worked for a state house candidate in Athens, Georgia, Deborah Gonzalez, who's now running for district attorney in Athens. I also worked on some county commission races in Athens while I was in school. And I was the president of the Young Democrats of UGA when Stacey Abrams was running for governor. So I've really been a fun kind of firsthand witness to Georgia's evolution as a state, which I'm excited to see come to fruition in a few weeks. But then I graduated in 2019 and started working on Elizabeth Warren's campaign in South Carolina with everyone here. And then the pandemic happened, and now I'm working for Raphael Warnock. So things are great. 13 days to go.
Things are great, and everyone is great. Mike, last but definitely not least.
Yeah, so I think Zoe saved me for the last because I tend to ramble. So if I go last, I don't eat into the other two people's time. So like the rest of my life, I'm also a late bloomer in politics. I always paid attention to politics. I remember as a little kid, the first time I was in a voting booth, and I remember how exciting it was to go to the state capitol. And my great grandmother used to tell us stories about how JFK is, I don't know, her third cousin once removed or something like that. So it's always been something I paid attention to. I remember in 1992 listening to my handheld radio all night to see who won the presidential election. I studied political science in college, which took me much longer than it should have to graduate, because I took 6 months off, and it ended up being closer to 6 years. And then once I finished that, I decided I wanted to go to grad school because I love school. I love running my mouth. I love having conversations. I like research. So I got a master's in public administration, and like many people, couldn't afford to go work in a dream job of public service. So I stayed in the private sector for another 8 years after that. And then after 2016, and seeing what happened to the country that I love, it really made me decide that I couldn't stay in a job where it was about punching a clock and bringing home a paycheck anymore. So I took a severance package as soon as I could and moved back to South Carolina to get involved in EW's campaign. Before that, I organized protests. I always voted. I always volunteered on campaigns, at least for the presidential general election. But I just knew it was time to do something else. So I picked Columbia, found an apartment, put all my shit in a U-Haul, dragged the dogs back down south with no real plan other than the fact that I figured headquarters on a primary campaign in South Carolina would have to be in Columbia. So that was it. No job, no plan. I just started showing up to things around the city. I went and volunteered at one of the Pride events, and Devin was there wearing a EW t-shirt. So I talked to him for a couple minutes. I started coming by the office to volunteer. Then an internship opened up. I never thought I would be in my 30s changing careers and happy to take an internship so that I didn't have to eat all of my savings up. And then became a field organizer, and now I'm managing a state Senate race here in the Low Country that is going to put a Black female nurse in the South Carolina State Senate in the middle of a pandemic when we need someone like that the most. So that's that.
I'm happy cool. Mike went last.
Yeah, well, and I'm happy you had a career change and choice and all that. I mean, I kind of did too. I wasn't into politics until 2016 and didn't get into my first race until 2018. And it's definitely been a journey and a ride. But once again, super thankful that I've met you three and just everyone involved. Everyone just came from such a different place. I still can't believe for 10 months I was in South Carolina, in Columbia, South Carolina, and having to just all the things with the different counties in the region, and going up to Aiken of all places. And I remember my meals were always going to the Sam's Club and either getting a pizza and an IC and a churro, which is super unhealthy, or going to Bojangles, which I remember I would always go to Bojangles.
Bojangles.
Yeah, the person who would always greet me at the door
Every day.
would always be you and one of the volunteers, and I would always have like an egg and cheese biscuit and a Pepsi. So super unhealthy, but I mean, I guess it's a campaign, and then a bunch of candy at the front, but never eat the yellow Laffy Taffies unless you're Jess, which is very disgusting, by the way. But I mean, we all did what we did, and took the paths we did because we really believed in a candidate. And I remember first live hearing Senator Warren when she came for ACL in Austin, and at the time I was working at the Capitol in Austin, and didn't really have a candidate who I supported or anyone who I was really impressed by. I think the day before, maybe later that night, I heard Mayor Pete speak, and he was cool. But I think hearing Elizabeth Warren, I was like, this is the person that I'd like to work for. So I think literally after that ended, I went to my apartment and I sent in an application, and I later heard back, and super overjoyed to have been part of that campaign. So getting to our next little part of this is why Elizabeth Warren. There was like 50 candidates running, and you could have picked Tulsi Gabbard or John Delaney, or right? Is his name John Delaney? I forgot something.
You got it.
Yeah. I got it.
Tom Steyer or Mike Bloomberg.
Yeah, there's a lot of great folks. So why Elizabeth Warren? And we'll kick off the person who won last time, Mike.
Oh, backwards. So why Elizabeth Warren? I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to move back down here and get involved, and I knew it was going to take a lot of work for me personally to do it. Like, I knew I'm not anybody. I don't know anyone in South Carolina politics really, so it's going to be this difficult, and I want it to be that impactful, and I want it to be the right one that should be in the White House, not only someone who could beat the current occupant. So I read a bunch of books. I read the biographies of like 4 or 5 candidates that I had kind of narrowed it down to, and waited, and I didn't think it was going to be her. I didn't really want it to be her. I mean, I love her, but I wanted it to be someone else. I wanted it to be someone who was going to be easy, So I studied them. I watched speeches. I went and met a bunch of them. I saw them in person. I met Pete the day before I decided that it was definitely going to be Elizabeth Warren for me. And the reason it was her was because, when I thought about selling one of these people to the public and to voters, right? Because that's what you do as a field organizer. That's when you're constantly selling your candidate. And the only one for me that no matter what somebody asks me about a policy, no matter what somebody asks me on her experience, she was the only one that I really felt like I had a constant answer every time. And I knew what her big picture was. And I don't know if that's because she really had the best policies that made the most sense, or if she had my policies and she found a way to make the things that I care about work when it comes to numbers and it making sense and being explainable to people and done in a way that folks understand. So once that clicked, I couldn't pick anyone else. She chose me.
Yeah, no, I mean, working with you for as long as we did, it really did show every single day how much you cared about the campaign, but how much you were invested in the candidate. Everything from your plan book that you made to decorating the office into Bailey's room and the plan room, and just how you took ownership of Aiken. Honestly, most people probably wouldn't have relocated to Aiken, South Carolina, to work for a candidate, and you did it, and you had an office and volunteers, and I really did enjoy, on days that you weren't there, or obviously days you were there too, but on days where you weren't there, when I would work out of that office and have the volunteers come in, just the smile they had on their face when they spoke about you and everything you did as an FO in that region. And you had a wall with pictures of yourself and different volunteers, and I always really enjoyed that. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. So props to you for that. Anna.
God, I love hearing Mike talk about Elizabeth Warren. Brings me back. Yeah, it was always Senator Warren for me. When I was first getting into politics, she was like the first political figure that I was really drawn to because of how welcoming and inclusive she was and how she talked to people, and also in how she talked about policies. Like, coming into politics, I didn't know much about anything, but like I could always listen to Elizabeth Warren talk about like healthcare or about taxes or about big banks and like understand what the problem was. And she was also so able to articulate solutions and the reasons why, like when, where, why, and how we need this, why it hasn't been done yet, how we're going to do it. Like, I think for me, it was just impossible to listen to her speak and not feel motivated and excited. So she was a big facet in me, like feeling like I can make a difference and that we could make a difference and that it was possible to do so. And in the primary, I do, just kind of leaping on Mike's points, I think her plans to this day are just unparalleled, and I'm happy that some of them have been adopted. But I mean, in July, she was coming out with plans for rural, like broadband access, like 100% coverage in July, and just like plans for universal childcare and like these just groundbreaking ideas that are now in the universe for other people to adopt. So I'm so happy she ran. I'm so happy I worked for her.
Yeah, I'll never forget after the town hall in Aiken, her and her husband Bruce came to the Columbia office. Well, I guess in the back HQ, which was the same thing. But when you went up, I don't know I think it's when you went up to her. I don't think it's when she initially entered the room. You just started, you got really red and you were just crying. And I'm sure there's a picture somewhere of that.
I have so many pictures of me red-faced crying, and I'm like several inches taller than Elizabeth Warren, but I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, I remember.
She's a great hugger, for sure.
Bradley.
Yeah, I mean, not too dissimilar from Mike. I knew I wanted to work for a presidential campaign because I wanted to get Donald Trump out of office. And I knew I wanted to, weigh my options out. There were some candidates that I knew I didn't want to work for because I didn't agree with their agenda or their ideology so much, but also didn't know a lot about Elizabeth Warren and some of the other candidates like Pete and Kamala. And so I wanted to go see them speak, kind of like you did, Mike. And I think Elizabeth stood out to me in just such a unique way because of what she did and how she interacted with people after she was done with her town hall. And that selfie line, which I didn't even know was a thing. And I got to like help out with that. And she just took the time to talk to every single person. If someone went up to her to take a picture, she wasn't rushing them along. She's answering questions for 5-10 minutes, just talking to one single person when there's a line of people. And that is not typical with politicians and with people who work in politics, not trying to get people out in and out of the door. And that really stood out to me. And I had the opportunity to meet her then too, the very first time I saw her speak, which was really like a great experience, and getting to talk to her then too, and even ask her a couple questions. And I think that's really cemented it for me. It was probably another month and a half, 2 months before I actually started working on the campaign. But I think I knew at that moment that I wanted to work for her. And I think every single day that I worked on that campaign, I knew I made the right choice. I had some people in my life who, said, maybe you should work for a different candidate, like just career things. And I knew that I made the choice for someone I believe in ideologically. And I value that experience so much. And it was, like you said, Mike, it was so easy to talk to people about Elizabeth Warren. Like, it was so easy to have an answer to everyone's question, to every issue, to address everything. And that's what made me feel so good working on that campaign, because I wasn't just, pushing out any kind of canned answer or anything like that. It was genuine plans and genuine things. I always told people she was the pragmatic progressive. She had these very concrete and real ways to get things done that are very progressive, and people said were things that couldn't get done or impossible. Medicare for all, universal child care, what have it. But she tried and she pushed for it, and she had plans to do it. And she really resonated with me. So that's kind of why I stuck with her.
Yeah, I remember I told a friend of mine that I was going to join her campaign, move out to South Carolina and join her campaign, and they're like, "Why Elizabeth Warren? Like, you should join X, Y, and Z." And I mean, for me, it was just like, she's someone she's consistent, right? She's true to herself, and she's done her homework, and I think that came out in the form of her plans and her policies and her platforms, and it's hard to. There's a lot of, I mean, there were a lot of great candidates. I'm not going to put any candidate down. But it's, she was just such a genuinely nice individual when, regardless of the current occupant of the White House, it's like, we need more real people in the White House. I remember when she came to South Carolina and we, as a campaign, went out to eat at that, I forgot what that restaurant was called.
Liberty
Tap House.
Liberty.
Right? Was it Liberty Tap House or is it just called Liberty?
Liberty
Tap Room. Cool. But like she literally just, with her husband, got a table right next to the staff and just ate and just, hung around for a bit. And, even before then, when she, it wasn't a surprise, but she just came out and spoke to staff and took questions. She's just someone who really cares about, the work that's being done. And that's why I really, was honored to have worked for her for as long as I did. How was working on a presidential campaign? Outside of having a great rod like myself who wore Birkenstocks and socks around the office, and sometimes only socks, I guess, and all the Publix runs and what else was nearby? That sushi place was nearby, which half the time would make people sick and half the time it would be great. But how was working on a presidential campaign in an early state? And we'll kick this one off with Anna, especially because Anna, you came from Athens, right? And like South Carolina is a very different type of South, right? Like I mean, I can't speak of how it is from Georgia, but at least it's very different than Texas. So for me, it was like, I got adjusted like fairly quickly, but the initial, I think, few weeks, I was like, where am I? So how was working on a presidential in beautiful Columbia, South Carolina?
Oh yeah, it was a blast. It was just something different every day. Yeah, it was the first campaign I ever worked on. So it's kind of my baseline. But it was cool. It's like every single person that you talk to is going to be able to vote for this candidate or not. That's what it doesn't really matter if you're talking to somebody in like North Carolina. I mean, South Carolina, not North Carolina, the northern part of South Carolina, or like the south part of South Carolina. Everybody's going to be voting for this presidential candidate. So I think it's interesting to have such a high stakes and know that it's so important for everybody. Yeah, it was great. It was impactful.
Cool. Mike.
So it was nuts. And that's just the nature of campaigns. I think, especially campaigns that large. Political campaigns are the one thing that I can think of, the one industry, right, if you want to call it that you go to work in, where going in the door that the organization you're going to work for is not built to last purposefully beyond the next few months, right? Like at best, you transition into a larger campaign and go on to do something else. Like had we won the primary, staying on and going to work for a national structure and then potentially something else beyond that is one thing. But especially smaller campaigns, like you don't have that ability. So it's basically like walking into like pop-up store or something, right? Like, I mean, that's what the offices are. Like it's very similar to that, like a retail pop-up shop where you have to be light and agile, and it's stressful, but it's incredibly rewarding. And even on the toughest days on a campaign, if you believe in what you're doing there, it's worthwhile. Don't go into it for the money. Don't go into it for, I don't know, the glamour of politics, for the people that think that there's glamour in it. But if you go into it for the right reasons, and you remember why you're there, and you have something to remind you every day of why you're doing what you're doing, why you're spending so much time away from your family and, you know, away from home. I moved 3 times, and the thing that made it bearable was like, we're going to change the fucking world, right? So that's it. So when you look at it like that, like you find something each day, and the right things come at the right time, right? Like I always got thank yous from volunteers or like notes that would tell me like, I've never been involved before. Thank you for doing what you're doing. I've learned so much. Or little kids come with their parents, and you can see like these kids' lives are going to be changed by the fact that their mom came and ran a phone bank twice a week. Like they'll forever be invested in our civics in this country. So it's a crazy roller coaster ride, but it's worthwhile.
Yeah, I remember definitely happened in Colombia. I don't know if this happened in the Aiken office, but a lot of volunteers would be like, okay, I'll see you guys in March, or I can't do stuff right now. Let's do it later. I'm like, ma'am, we're not going to be here in past February 29th. Like, regardless, even if we keep going, like this is done. This isn't. We're not going to like. We're not permanent residents. Most of us aren't of Colombia. So like, we need you to volunteer now. But yeah, I mean, just echoing what you said, like shout out to, we had a lot of amazing volunteers. I know, and I'm probably going to forget a lot of names, but I know in Aiken we had, I remember Miss Catherine, I remember Rachel, and she'd bring her kids and her husband. Who's the lady that would come from, was it Augusta, Georgia? Or some part of Georgia she'd come in?
Yeah, you're talking about Miss Judy.
Yeah, Miss Judy. Yeah,
Judy and Charlotte. Yes.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
I mean, they were great. And I remember when they came to Columbia, like she was obsessed with you, Mike, and she was like, she really wanted. And I remember she would tell you like, "Oh, tell Elizabeth I said this." Like she was just so.
She thought I had her on like speed dial, but I could call her up and be like, "Hey, Liz,
They always do.
Like, Judy said, say hello to you." Which, I mean, I think some of that was like her kind of feeding into my ego a little bit, like purposefully, like trying to make me feel better, like wink and nod, like, yeah, I know you don't actually know her, you jerk. So I think some of that was for my benefit. But there were some legitimate people who thought like she's back there in the back office or something when they would stop by. I need to ask her a question.
It was so endearing at times though. Like I remember there were folks who would come by and they'd give me a note and they're like, okay, give this to Elizabeth next time you see her. Or tell her that, you know, next time she should wear this color or she should say this or she should. And I'm like, yes, ma'am, I'll do that. And I'm like, I don't know her. So, but no, I mean, volunteers were always great. I know in Columbia we had, you know, Christy who was there like several times a week, and we had Robin and we had Regina and just a bunch of other folks who were just constant volunteers, and then we had people like Emma and Tia, which is a thing we'll get into later. But same question. I know I went from Mike. I forget who hasn't gone yet. Bradley, have you gone? No.
Just me. Well, just to touch on that, it was funny because I had it like right next to me, but it's those little things that like vols do for you, make you feel better. Like when Regina gave us these little Democrat pins. But Mike hit the nail on the head. Like it's, and not to sugarcoat it at all, it's the most stressful, but like the most rewarding experience. Like I've had my single like worst days in like a job, but also my single best days in a job. And you know, that's just how it is with a candidate in the primary. And I think a lot of that's, you know, just not even internal like things, it's just external factors, just because it really depends. Your job can get a lot harder based on how your candidate performs or how, you know, another candidate reacts to your candidate in a debate, or, you know, it's one of those things, and public perceptions and the media and things like that can just really make your job different day to day. So it's different in that aspect, because you really do not know what to expect every day. Like there's no way to know what your next day is going to look like, but it's just so rewarding. Like you're really doing that real work. I mean, I always tell people who don't really know about campaigns or stuff like that really pretty much every part, especially on presidential campaigns and Democratic politics, everything else on a campaign is going to support the field program at the end of the day. everything, your digital team, your finance team, it's all to go into your ads that you run. At the end of the day, it's all goes down to turning those people out and convincing those people to vote for you and turning those people out. And being a part of that was just so rewarding to be able to, actually execute that vision on the field. But it was so unique. It was great. I'll also end it with that.
No, that was my first time doing field, and I have so much respect for organizers, especially now during a pandemic. But yeah, without a good field program, you're only as good as your field program. So shout out to any and all folks in field. So there were, we were all there for a while. A lot of good memories, a lot of interesting stories. So let's start off with what's one of your favorite memories of the primary? I think I have a few, and I think the one that I normally mention is convention, just because the day before in South Carolina they have a fish fry, Congressman Clyburn's fish fry. So I forgot how early we got to the convention area, but we were there like chanting and doing
6 a.m.
Oh, that was 6 a.m. that day on the fish fry day.
Not fish fry.
Yeah,
convention.
Yeah, for fish fry, I think we were there by sometime in the early afternoon, and then we were there until like close to midnight. And then I think that night Senator Warren came by, and it was her birthday, and we sang her happy birthday. And then that morning, I think I had to be up at like 3, because it was raining that morning, and we had to get a bunch of stuff to the convention center, and then that day was such a blur. But then from everything, from Senator Warren's speech to getting folks in and out of that area, Bradley, with the badges, like just making sure we had like the largest group possible. And then after that, seeing Senator Warren once again before in that parking garage area with I forget who else was there. I think we saw Hickenlooper and a bunch of other folks who were leaving that area. But yeah, I think convention was and the fish fry was probably the most memorable for me. But how about you, Mike?
So I think that I have 2 most memorable ones that jump out when you ask me that. The first one would be the fact that I got to introduce a presidential candidate to a crowd of people with, CNN and MSNBC and local news there the day before the South Carolina Democratic primary. That was definitely like the peak for me. It doesn't, for a political nerd, it doesn't really get any cooler than that. And then as far as like regular day-to-day stuff, during GOTV, the day of the primary, God, I can't even remember how many doors I knocked that day. I knocked even more Super Tuesday. Like I knocked almost 300 doors in North Carolina. But anyway, I knocked on this door and I could hear somebody in there like saying something, or she was like singing or something. So I knew she was in there, and I've got to get people to the polls. So I knocked harder, and the window was open, and she yells, she's like, "I'm in the shower. Who is it?" And I said, "It's Mike with Elizabeth Warren's campaign, blah, blah, blah." She's like, I'm going to have to talk to you when I get out of the shower. And I was like, "All right, well, I can wait a little while or I'll circle back around." She's like, "No, what do you need? I need you to go vote. Have you voted yet today?" "No, I haven't voted yet today." "All right, well, when you get out of the shower, get dressed. I'm leaving this on your door. It tells you where to go vote." I know where to go vote. And then moved on to the next house thinking like she's probably not going to go. But then like 30 minutes later, as I'm circling back around to go to my car, I see her getting out of her car and her hair's still wet. And she's like, "Mike, is that you, Mike?" She didn't recognize my face. I didn't know who she was because we didn't talk. I just heard her voice. But she saw my Warren shirt on. She said, "Don't worry, I went and voted for her." So that was pretty cool too, to drag somebody out of the shower the day of. Not that it was that one vote that did it, but
I've never heard this story, but I love it. You said you had another story, didn't you? Didn't you say you have 2? Oh yeah, introducing
her and
that. Anna.
That was beautiful, Mike. I have a few. I think one would be on primary day, February 29th in South Carolina. I also got to introduce Elizabeth Warren in Columbia. It was on our election day. So I got to stand on the same stage as her. I got to have the same glass of water pictured behind me in later photographs. It was great. That was definitely, I think, the most adrenaline I felt. Just that was my first real election day where you're like, all right, we have literally 12 hours. Like, what are we going to do with every second? I think another good memory would be South Carolina Pride in Columbia. I'm looking at Bradley because I feel like I'm taking memories here, but we had so much fun. Me and Bradley were like the cheer captains, the hype captains. We had some specific title, but we were like passing the megaphone back and forth, both losing our voices with fun chants. And yeah, I think those are my two highlights.
Bradley.
Yeah, I absolutely just love, and just kind of goes on like any campaign. I love those kinds of those principal events, the things where you're going out and like there's a lot of people. I just love feeding off that energy. It's always so fun. And convention especially was just absolutely surreal. Like being able to see literally every single person who is running for president speak in front of you, and like all these other people who are so like politically engaged. It gave you a lot of hope, but like also it was a lot of fun. And then kind of just a volunteer experience too was canvassing. There was this person who wasn't on my list, but she had 3 Warren signs in her yard. And so I went and knocked on her door. Her name's Marzi. And we just talked for like 30 minutes about like South Carolina politics. We just had such a good, genuine conversation. She said, give me literature, give me signs, give me koozies, give me buttons, give me everything. I'm going to go like give this out to all my neighbors. And I did. And, I've talked to her since. And then on this campaign I'm working on now, actually, she didn't know I was working on this campaign for Dick Harpootlian. And she emailed the candidate, Dick, and was asking for some signs and everything. When I saw him forward me that email, my eyes just lit up, and went over there recently, and we had a socially distanced ginger beer together. It was great. We talked more shop with South Carolina politics, and just like making those connections with people at the door and like meeting people like that is just such like a good experience. And it's a connection that you keep for a long time. Like I got to talk to her and interact with her, on this campaign, and who knows, I'll probably cross paths again. And I'm sure there's people that you all have met, whether that's a volunteer or someone else that's, had that impact on you and you've stayed in contact with. And that's a really like rewarding part of campaigns, is making those kinds of connections with people.
Yeah, for sure. I still every now and then text some of our, the old Vols from South Carolina. And I remember when COVID first happened, I like texted everyone to make sure that they're, safe and they're doing well. So I think, I've been a part of a lot, a few campaigns before the Warren campaign, but, I truly felt, whether it be, staffers or interns or volunteers, like, those are relationships and friends and, whatever you want to call it, family that you'll have, for the rest of your life. So I echo that, Bradley. Who was your favorite surrogate? I know we had a lot of cool surrogates come through South Carolina. Congresswoman Deb Haaland came, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. We had Sheriff Tompkins come from Suffolk County. And then we had, I'm trying to think, we had a few. But who was your favorite? We had Josie come, she was a former city councilwoman from someplace in Holyoke.
Yep.
Correct. Cool. So a lot of really great surrogates. Who was your favorite Mike?
My favorite surrogate. It's hard to pick. I'm gonna say my favorite surrogate never came down. Bailey.
No, but I mean, out of anyone who came down.
I can't pick.
Okay.
I can't. I love Deb Haaland.
Okay.
I wish I had gotten to meet Ayanna Pressley.
Mm-hmm.
Sheriff Tompkins was great. He came and opened our Aiken office with me, so that was cool. So yeah, I can't pick a favorite, really. Bailey's my favorite, and I didn't get to meet him.
Well, you made her a room. Anna.
I would have to say Bruce, honestly.
Oh, I don't know why I didn't think of that. Yeah, that's a good
Or
one.
Ayanna Presley, but Bruce was the man, the myth, the legend in the flesh.
Did you get to meet Ayanna? I forgot.
No, but she did compliment me and Bradley's hard ask signs that we put in the call room.
Oh, that's right, in the call room. That's right. Bradley.
I gotta say, Deb for sure, just because I got to introduce her to everyone and interact with her a lot. So yeah, I'd have to say Deb Holland for sure.
All right, cool. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Deb. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Deb. Oh, we also had what's his name come, but I don't think anyone met him. John Legend came the day. Who did he come with? Was it him and Ayanna Presley who came? Congresswoman Presley, right, in Charleston?
Him and Elizabeth.
Oh, was it just this?
was just
Oh, yeah, I didn't know.
Mhm.
I didn't know. I thought it was the Congresswoman and him. But yeah, no. John Legend was also a good one. So interesting stories. I think every campaign has an interesting story. I know Anna has to hop off at 8 because of Project Veritas, and I know at the Deb Holland event, did Emma come to the house too? Did she come to Regina's house? Yeah, she was there too for that event too, right?
Yeah, she was.
She was.
She was there.
Okay, so we had I don't know who wants to talk about this specifically. I feel like she touched all of us, all our lives in a specific way. But we had a Project Veritas tracker employee. I don't even know what to call her. Tracker. Her name was Emma, and I don't know who wants to talk about her. I guess we'll kick it off with Bradley.
Yeah, no, that was crazy. I will never forget the day that we found out that she was Project Veritas. For those of you who don't know, I guess preface that Project Veritas is a right-wing kind of organization that will put people into Democratic, especially progressive campaigns, and try to get people to say things out of context and then post them online and say, oh, someone said this. A lot of presidential campaigns were affected by it. But anyways, they're bad actors who go into campaigns, pose as volunteers, and try to covertly film you and edit clips out of context. Anyways, I remember the day that we found out that we had some suspicions, just when someone comes in and starts asking you really weird leading questions, I think that's the real red flag for it. But that started happening a lot more often and it's very sporadic. There were weird phone numbers going on, but
well, she didn't have a phone number, right? That was her thing, right? I don't have a phone.
Something like that.
But she had an email, but she didn't have a phone number. Yeah,
or something like that. But regardless, I remember we found out I was canvassing. I think we were all canvassing, and I think I called Anna, and we just freaked out for 10 minutes. Did we say anything bad? No.
Yeah, I was throwing it
but
on the street.
Yeah, I remember. So she would come by the office with a Starbucks cup, and I noticed once we found out, oh my God, she's Project Veritas, because she had done something on the Bernie campaign in South Carolina. We started looking through pictures, and she either would always hide her face in pictures, or she had a Starbucks cup. And I think we kind of deduced that was probably either a microphone or a camera. And I just remember she would always like talk to me. And, I think the campaign did such a great job in training us on, what not to say and how to, answer a question when it, might be asked. Because she would always try to bait me of like talking mess about a campaign or a candidate, and I would just be like, no, they're great. We're doing everything, and hopefully on election day, that's what results show. But she, I think she tried really hard with us, and I know she came up to Aiken too, but she ultimately was unsuccessful. But Mike, if you want to talk about your experience with Emma and Aiken.
I mean, it's just it's like a version of Bo Rat, only she's not funny. They come in with a hidden camera, and it's so odd. She showed up to volunteer and wanted to said she was there to make phone calls, and then all she wanted to do was sit and talk shit about Bernie Sanders and oh, Bernie Sanders is so, oh God, he should just get out of this, right? who are you? You got here 5 minutes ago. Are you here to talk about Bernie Sanders? Because you're in the wrong place. Don't have anything. Make the phone call, Emma, or beat it. You know, like I guess I gave her enough of a cold shoulder that I'm like, I'm not sitting here. I don't want to talk about Joe Biden. I'm busy. I'm working here, lady. You know, that she just eventually left. It was so bizarre.
Yeah, she left as quick as she came, I guess. Even though she like disappeared in the middle for a bit, and then she came
I think that's
back.
what tipped us off, yeah, because she had like a hiatus and was coming back all of a sudden, and I think it was Devin that found it on the Project Veritas website, like a recording of her with some other campaign in South Carolina.
She's got that bizarre accent too. Like you can tell she's got an accent, but she's trying to hide it. Like she sounds like a British person who doesn't know how to like not sound British, or I don't know if she's American but trying to make herself sound slightly British.
But like
that's her real voice.
That's why Project Veritas.
It's so terrible.
That's what like they feed on that, because like with Emma, like I knew she was different or off, but like we're also like as a Democratic campaign like trying to be very inclusive and welcoming to people. So you're not going to be like that lady with the weird wig. Like I don't know why she's wearing a wig.
Right.
You know? Like I assume that she's like trying to infiltrate the campaign. You're like, she's kind of off, she's got an accent, but like she shows up. So like it's easy for those people to like get involved in campaigns and like be successful.
Do you remember that thing we had where that lady showed up to make calls, and then after like 10 minutes of making calls, she ran around the office like to every room and like burst open the door with her cell phone camera out?
I do remember that.
What's going on in here? And then she went to the next room and we're like, it's a phone bank. Like I think she was
just excited.
No, I think she was just excited.
No, I think she was like a new recruit who just didn't know what she was doing. Like I think she was probably there to get like footage of stuff, but just had no idea how it works. Like she's busting open like stock rooms and she's like, what's going on in here? Videotaping things. Yeah, it was super sketchy.
Yeah. It was, but fun times. Honestly, it's all really interesting looking back at it. Just the different characters you meet and the many people on campaigns in the form of staff and volunteers and Project Veritas. It's always a trip. How was election night for y'all? Or election day, I guess? Because I know for me, I know Bradley and I both started in the morning putting up those like huge signs, right, Bradley?
I love that.
I forgot how early in the morning it was, but we basically had the U-Haul and we put up these huge signs like all over Columbia by like voting locations, and I forget, some of them we just put like in, I guess, like major intersections and whatnot. And then I think after we did that, we were just on doors until 7. And I know I went up to Robbins area, and then I think Bradley, you stayed in downtown. But yeah, how was election day? Like, let's first talk about all the way up from the moment you woke up to the last door you hit. How was that for you, Bradley?
Well, as I said, I love the sign game. It's just fun. I don't know why. I just love it. But I don't know. It's very like election day is just such high energy, and you just like know what you're getting into. It's everything you've worked for is building up to this one moment. So it's like anxiety inducing, but it's also like, let's get this thing done. Let's get it over with. Let's get through this day. I don't know. It was very stressful day. Like, not gonna lie there, but it was so like nice when it was over, before the results came in, and you had that chance to just kind of decompress and like, wow, like it's done. Although we did go to Super Tuesday states literally like the next day, so there wasn't much of downtime there. But it was election day, then another election day 3 days later. But yeah, it was a lot, but it was fun. Election day.
It was good Anna. From like 6:55 to 7 p.m. while we were like, maybe this could go in our favor. And then 7:01 p.m. it was like called. Yeah, election day, very much agree with Bradley. I'm surprised I even slept at all the night before. You just wake up and you're like, oh my God, we've been counting down to this day for 8 months. And yeah, I got to do the field pitch and canvas training in Columbia with Elizabeth Warren. So that was awesome. And then immediately just hit the doors. I think I walked like 12 miles that day, knocking on doors until 6:55 p.m. And at that point, like the last door I knocked, someone answered and I was like, have you voted? And they were like, I voted. And I was like, great. All right, I'm going to end it with that. It was like 6:56. It's like, all right, there we go.
Mike?
It was over with in like an instant. All that build up, months and months, and like hundreds and hundreds of hours that you spend devoted to this one thing. It's like planning. It's like 150 people in the state planning a wedding, and then you're all separate for the event itself and focused on. I don't know. It's a bit surreal, and it just flies by so quick. The last door I knocked was somebody who had an Elizabeth Warren sign in the window. The sun was going down, or the sun, it might have actually already been down. I was out there till like right at 7:00, trying to get every last vote, and then right back up the next day and on the way to North Carolina.
Unlike y'all, election day was my last day with the campaign, and then the next day I was on the way back to Texas. But I remember getting up early, meeting up with Bradley at the office, and then just all the doors. Even though it was election day, and by that time most people had made up their minds, but just a lot of the conversations you have with folks, whether they truthfully were motivated after my conversation with me and they did go out and vote for Elizabeth Warren like they said they did or not, they were just, it was just really solid conversations and just talking to, folks about issues that were important to them. And, you work, 8 months, 10 months for this moment, and then it's like, it's here. And I remember knocking on the last door, and then I think I had parked my car like a mile away or something, but just walking back to my car and I'm like, unless I'm magically in South Carolina for the next presidential, I'm like, this was the last door I knocked on for Elizabeth Warren, or this is the last door that I've not, I remember the first time I went out canvassing, and now this is the last time. And it was a very surreal moment. And then after that, just driving back to the office. And I think by the time I got to the office, it was about 7. I don't think results had come in yet, but then when they started coming in, once again, I applaud the whole team, but obviously it was just really disheartening. Not winning the state, but I think everyone put everything in it. And, I think it's safe to say that, we gave it our all, and, we left a mark in some way or another. And, I think that can't ever be understated. But yeah, how was election night? Because after that happened, I think the last thing I might have done was taking a picture with some staff and volunteers, and then I bounced out because I had already moved out of my apartment and I was staying in a hotel. And the next morning I was going to leave for Texas. So I, did rest of election night by myself. But how was election night for you, Mike?
Terrible. It's terrible. I mean, it's, I think the one thing was that it wasn't a surprise that it was Joe Biden. By that point, I tell people, if you work on a campaign or if you volunteer for a campaign, you don't need polls. If you're constantly talking to people, engaged voters, people that are very likely to get out and vote, you can make 100 phone calls in a day and know where the electorate is and who people are going to vote for. You can, so I knew she wasn't going to win that day. So, but it still sucked at the end of the day when it's, time to sit down and you worked so hard and you still tried, because even if you thought she wasn't going to pull a win off in South Carolina, you still wanted to make her viable to go on to the next thing, so that at least she's in there for Super Tuesday. And the percentages game when it comes to how many delegates are going to be allocated and that kind of thing, every door still mattered, every interaction still mattered, because I still wanted to do my part, that if there was some way it would be her, that I had done it.
Yeah.
So election night sucked. It sucked,
Yeah.
but it was less of a sting because it was kind of accepting, the lay of the land. And I think it just wasn't her time. The voters here in South Carolina made their decision. And I'm behind what they did in the race to turn things around and put it into Joe Biden's hands. I think the more attention I pay and the more I always knew he was a good man, and I knew he's still an imperfect man. But to see what he's done in the last 6 months and really listening to people and adapting to plans, and his tone is different and he's laser focused. And I really feel like he's rising to the occasion. So I was super happy to vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris last week. Ecstatic.
And Jamie Harrison.
And Jamie Harrison and Joe Cunningham and Debbie Bryant, the one that I'm working for now, and Crystal Matthews, our state House rep. It's really great. I told people when I came back to work on the campaign, they were like, well, what are you going to do if she doesn't win and you can't go on? I said, well, then I'm going to stick around in South Carolina and I'm going to help turn the state Senate blue. So that's ultimately what I'm going to do here. Cool. Or we're going to do. A lot of us are going to do. Bradley working on a state Senate race. I've met a lot of people that are working on these down ballot races here in South Carolina. I really feel like Jamie Harrison is showing people what can be done in this state, and there's going to be a lot of people that are able to benefit off the enthusiasm and engagement that he's brought to South Carolina. So it's really exciting. And Lindsey Graham is coming back to Seneca, South Carolina, or off to Moscow or wherever he wants to flee to once he's done.
Cool. Bradley, how was election night? It was a question.
I'm going to cede my time to Anna because I know she has to head out soon.
Yeah, election night. Good times. Actually, me and Bradley were sitting together at a restaurant and picking out our Airbnb to go to Chattanooga, Tennessee to canvass the next 3 days for Elizabeth Warren in Tennessee for Super Tuesday. So I thought she was going to win or get second place up until like 7 p.m. I really did. I was just so convinced by her. And I had seen her that morning and was so convinced again, just like hearing her. I think that morning she specifically talked about public education and universal childcare. And like just hearing her talk about that, I was like, things are going well. Like who could hear it? Who could hear it and not? Who could hear it and not? And then, yeah, Mike's right though. The voters chose and we're here. And I do think Joe Biden's risen to the occasion. But I did think that Elizabeth Warren was going to win South Carolina. But yeah, election night, we just pivoted right away. Pivoted right to Super Tuesday and what we could do to keep going.
Cool. And if you needed to hop off, Anna, you could go ahead. I'm a last. Oh, and she just hopped off. So my last question for I guess Bradley and Mike, what would your advice be to folks who are interested in getting into politics? And Bradley, since you had passed off the last question to Anna, I'll start off with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think I was just talking to some people about this recently. Actually, it's about finding your niche. Like it's so big, like this industry, the political industry. Like there's campaigns, yeah, but there's also advocacy work when you're working with organizations like the League of Conservation Voters or Sierra Club or They're All Pro-Choice or something. But there's also government type work, and there's campaigns. There's so much that you can do, but it's about finding your lane, especially for people who are still in college or who are even looking at a career change. Do some research, talk to people who are working in those positions, like reach out to those people, put yourself out there. I think you really have to do that in politics. That's a lot of industries, but you really have to put yourself out there in this industry. Try to intern as much as you can with a lot of different roles and positions. Don't just, stick to one thing. Like don't just do field internship. Do a communications internship, do a, digital internship, do a field, do data. There's so many different aspects of things you can get into. So don't feel like you have to like even stick to one thing if you start that way. Like I started off doing field, but that may not be something I continue doing down the line, and a lot of people do that. A lot of people transition to finance or transition to data, and that's just within campaigns, not even, outside of that. So don't limit yourself. Don't feel the need to stick to what you first chose. It's a lot like choosing a major in college, like your first choice might not be your best choice. So keep trying different things, see what works. Obviously, there's some privilege that comes with that and being able to do that. So that's why I say, try to do that while you have the opportunity to do that if you are still in college or something like that. But just try to put yourself out there and kind of see what works best for you, because not everything's for everybody, and there's so much you can do in politics. So if you get into field advocacy and it just doesn't something that vibes with you, or you feel, it doesn't mean you should get out of it. If you truly believe in changing this country and changing this world, stick to it. Just try to find what works best for you.
Cool. I thought you had left, Anna. Do you have time to answer one more question? You got to hop off.
Yeah. What was the question?
Advice for folks who want to get into politics or campaigns.
Advice. If you want to do it for sure. If you feel motivated enough by a candidate or by a time or by the time that you're living in, by the city you're living in, if you feel motivated and like that your voice could help, or your voice could be beneficial, or your voice isn't being adequately represented, you should absolutely get involved. Period. And with that, I am going to hop off. I wanted to get back on though, because I didn't mean to abruptly exit.
No, you're
thank
good.
You all.
Thank
It's great talking with you.
Yeah. See ya. And then Mike, you will end this session. Oh, I think you're muted.
What would I tell somebody? I would tell them, find something that makes you hopeful and go do that. You only get so many spins around the sun before this thing's over. So find something that makes you feel like you've done what it was you're supposed to do, right, with your life. And whether that's politics or something else, just go do it. Just go do it. Don't take away the excuses from yourself. Find a way to do it. Find a way to make it happen and go do it. Just jump in. And if it's not the perfect role for you, if it's not what you want, then move on to the next thing. And I know that's easier said than done for a lot of people, because a lot of people would like to do this. A lot of people would like to go work for a nonprofit, would like to do something meaningful with their lives, but it's difficult because the money's not great. I couldn't do this and raise a family. If it was more than just me, it'd be very difficult to do what I do. Student loans and that sort of thing. It's not the place for money, and it shouldn't be. Which is unfortunate, because you want more people to participate, and you want to recruit good public servants and people that will do the right things to these endeavors, right? But then we don't take care of them, and we don't make it possible for people. So some of it's by design. So if you can find a way to do what makes you hopeful and happy and feel fulfilled, then just go do it.
Cool. Well,
I just wanted to add to that, unionize your campaign. I'm the union guy here. Also, something I heard from my candidate who told, we were talking to our interns about this, and he said something that really resonated with me, is that, especially if you're running for office, but if you're going to work in politics at all, just don't do or say anything, especially that you just don't believe in. Like, don't compromise your beliefs just for your career, or try to be advancing in politics, or just because you think it'll help something. Like, that's what's wrong with this industry. That's why a lot of people have a negative perception of politics, thinking that it's cutthroat. It's not. Like, I think a lot of us here kind of shown that example that it's just not like that all the time. But stick to your beliefs, stick with what you believe in, and work for people that you believe in too.
Be as choosy as you can be, right?
Yeah.
If you're picking between two candidates, don't expect either of them to be perfect, but pick the one that's closest to your ideals, right? At all times, it's just always going to be a choice between two people, and I don't even think it's the two-party system necessarily. It's just always ends up being one or the other. So pick the one that will do the best thing.
Cool. Well, I want to thank you both for being on, and Anna, who just hopped off. I really had a good time talking to y'all and kind of catching up, even though we text fairly often. And I just can't state enough how honored and I was to work with you guys for 10 months on a presidential in beautiful Columbia, South Carolina. But good luck, Mike. I know you're working for a state senate race for Debbie Bryant. And then Bradley, I know you're working for a state senate race too with Dick Harpootlian. Am I pronouncing that right?
Harpootlian.
Yeah. So best of luck on those races. I know Senator Harpootlian is an incumbent, so hopefully he keeps his seat, and then hopefully Nurse Bryant flips that seat, and South Carolina. Jamie Harrison leads a blue wave in South Carolina.
actblue.com/adopt-jamie-harrison.
Do you want to give any shout out, Mike, before you hop up?
DebbieForSenate.com. Go to DebbieForSenate.com.
Cool.
And Harpootlian
Okay.
for Senate.
Donate. You can donate, get involved, volunteer. We got 12 days left now, huh?
Yeah.
It's coming. It's coming, y'all.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I will talk to you later, but thank you guys for being on.
Thanks, Al.
Bye.